Laura is going to get us started. You're muted, Laura.
A day full of technical difficulties. Thank you, everybody, for joining us for increasing student interest and engagement. We're so happy that you are spending a little bit of your day with us. I am Laura Albright and am joined by Dr. Patricia Hilliard, who you have heard from already, but just wanted to introduce ourselves real quick. We are from NC State University, the Friday Institute, and we are bringing you these remote learning support sessions in partnership with the North Carolina Department of Public Instruction, and we're just happy to be with you this afternoon. Tricia, did you want to say anything else?
Hello and welcome.
So just a couple technical items. Tricia has helped you out a little bit with some of the navigation pieces here already, but wanted to make sure you were aware that with these sessions, because of our large audience, you're not able to unmute yourself, but we will be utilizing the chat feature. So today we'll ask you to respond at various times, and so just go ahead and respond in the chat. You also are able to minimize and or change the view of people's videos. So if the videos are distracting to you, or you would like to minimize them or move them to a different location on your screen, you're able to do that. You are also viewing my screen, and so that defaults to be in full screen mode. If you don't like that view, you can change that view as well. And then you notice the closed captioning that's going on the bottom as well. So where we are going today, it's kind of nice in these webinars to know how things will roll. So we'll start with, of course, our rationale and our goals. We'll provide 4 really practical strategies on how you can increase student interest and engagement in remote learning. Very practical and useful strategies, mostly geared towards our secondary students. But I think you will find these are applicable and relative to all ages. And then, of course, at the end, we give you about 10 minutes to ask questions and or share resources. We will share our slides with you. We will share more information on coaching support sessions, and we'll ask you to complete that evaluation. So let's go ahead and get started. In thinking about your students that you serve, depending on that number or who that might be, would just like you to reflect for a second on these 2 questions. What % of your students would you say that you are doing a good or a great job with? And you can define what that good and great means, but just quantify that in some sort of percentage. And then of these students, what do they have in common? So thinking of adjectives to describe them. And then if last names A through D could respond in the chat, just to number 2. So a word or a phrase that would describe that population of students. If you can take a moment, respond in the chat if your last name starts with A through D. So it looks like we have words coming in to describe these students. Highly motivated from Yolanda, determined from Malika, determined from Elizabeth as well. Some similar words. Motivated has come up a good amount. Okay. So thank you for sharing. first half of the alphabet, folks.
And do
Now,
not worry, we will make our way through the entire alphabet.
part two of that question then is what percent, if you could quantify those students that you are not engaging or that you may be missing the mark with. So think of that percentage. And then what do these students have in common? So when you have that adjective or that word to describe those students, if your last name is E through H, go ahead and share in the chat. So the word to describe the students that were not reaching, Linda says attendance. They're coming in quick. I'm trying to catch up. Jocelyn, uninterested. Kendra, not intrinsically motivated. Lack of support has come up a couple times, or distracted, Tracy said. Language barriers. So some of these descriptors are possibly out of the student's control, right? So where we're going today and how you can kind of frame your thinking as we go throughout this next hour is the percent that we're not reaching. So we are really wanting to, remote learning or not, support our students. And we know that there's ways that can do that. We've probably tried lots of different strategies, but we're still missing the mark with a certain small percentage of students.
So I appreciate your honesty in sharing that not all of us reach 100% of our students, especially now that we are in this remote learning environment. So when Laura and I submitted our description of this session, we had this nice and fancy description that Laura will show you. We had this description that talked about increasing student interest and engagement and comprehension. Lots of cute little buzzwords there that we were using. And as we were planning the session, we realized that there is a percentage of students that we are especially not reaching in this remote learning environment, whether it is because I think Sarah mentioned they struggled before this and they're still struggling now. Stephanie mentioned poverty, and just poverty in and of itself, we could really dissect that to different levels to look at that. But a lot of people talked about they're not motivated. There's little parent support. They may be distracted. There's apathetic. So in looking at the situation that we are in now, we decided to not necessarily hold off on this description, but go a little bit deeper instead of really wide, so that we can target the percentage of students that we are especially not reaching right now in remote learning with some differentiated support that could happen for those students. So after some reflection, on the next slide, you will see that we didn't bamboozle you at all. We just decided to go deep. So we wanted to explore ways to support, to provide some type of differentiated support for students who are struggling with that self-learning, self-directed learning. Some of you mentioned that. Also, if you're like me, you've been to 9 million webinars, and in those webinars, they're talking about equity, but what I don't hear is a lot of solutions to the equity issues that some of the students are experiencing due to everything that has already been mentioned, especially access. So we're going to look at some equitable teaching practices. And while we go through this, I don't want you to think whole group, because we're talking about differentiation. I want you to think of either that one student who doesn't answer the phone, who doesn't come to the Zoom session, or a small group of students that are really kind of left behind right now. So that when we get to the fancier differentiation that we're going to talk about in our next session, that those particular students won't be as left behind. So in looking at this chain can represent what we all like to think of as differentiation. So you can see if Laura clicks that that's the choice boards, that's the learning, that's the PBLs, that's the flipped classroom is the chain. But you know that if you did any of these like fancier strategies, that there'll be a group of students that just won't start, they won't finish, they won't do it well, they won't pay attention, they won't get organized. And that missing link is executive function. So we're going to talk about, the majority of our session is going to be focused on providing that targeted, differentiated support for a student or a group of students who needs help with executive function. Once they get that support, we can see interest increasing, we can see comprehension increasing. It would be great if they would just go to Jody Williams, like, Miss Williams, you know, I need help with my executive function. We know that that doesn't necessarily happen. First of all, they don't know the words executive function, and sometimes people don't know how to ask for the help that they need. So on the next couple of slides, we're just going to talk very briefly about executive function. So these are the mental processes that happen in your mind. It's kind of like your brain's CEO. They juggle things, they make sure everything is going accordingly. We are all born, we all develop executive function over time, but some students, those ones that are kind of left behind, they may not have developed them fully yet. So on the next slide, you will see that there's about 7 or 8 different executive functions, depending upon which website you go to. So there's 6, 7 here, I think 6 or 7 that are here. And like I said, executive functions are the brain CEO. Before a student can do a learning menu or a PBL, she or he may need some support with getting organized. There might be a small group of students that might have some problems getting started, and you know exactly who they are. They may need some small, targeted, differentiated support with task initiation. So, in moving to the next slide, you'll see that we're looking at explicitly teaching a small group of students these executive functions. Once again, not to give the whole class this, the whole class doesn't need it. You could create a choice board for some of your students and they'll say, thank you, Ms. Sanders, I'm great. I'm gonna go on, I'm gonna do it, I'm gonna ace it, I'm gonna be fine. But you know there's about 4 or 5 that won't even get started. So as you're moving through this, think, maybe I need to have some one-on-one meetings with some students, and since they don't have access, I can call them like old school on the telephone or text them, or some small group instruction that could happen like this on Zoom or Google Hangout. So enough background information, let's get into the work. So we're gonna focus on 4 executive functions that we thought were appropriate for secondary. Now, if you snuck on here in your elementary, we're not gonna kick you out. That could also be helpful for elementary as well. So these are the 4 we're gonna focus on.
So let's jump right in then. Attention, something that we have to teach students, not something that we can assume that they are going to come with a skill and play student really well. We know there are students that can play the game of school really well. We know there is a small percentage of students that struggle with attention and focus, and especially now in our remote learning environment where notifications and distractions are maybe more than ever. Distractions at home and or on the phone. I know with the iPhone and the screen, what is it? Your, how long you've spent on your phone a day and how many notifications you get a day. Sometimes at the end of the day, I look at that and I'm overwhelmed myself at how many dings I've gotten and how many emails I've gotten all in one day. So that's for adults. Think about students. It is hard to pay attention and stay focused when we have all of these other distractions. So let's experience what it might be like for a student who already struggles to pay attention and what these outside distractors might feel like for that student. So I'm going to take you through a simulation, and you will just be an observer as I go through the simulation. So this is a simulation in the classroom, although try not to let that be a distraction because even though the example is in the classroom, this is also very relevant at home as well. So it's just a couple-minute simulation through the eyes of a child who may struggle with attention and focus.
Okay, put away your books. We're going to play a game. In this game, we're going to find homes for the animals. Listen to me carefully. In front of you are some animal cards and a grid. I'm going to tell you where to move each animal card so every animal ends up in the right place on the grid. Are you ready? Everyone take the snake card. Now look at the grid. Put the snake card on the camel in the grid. Got it? Good. Now take the bird card and put it on the kangaroo in the grid. Dylan, are you with us? Okay. Now take the monkey. Put it on the
I don't have a monkey.
Is that yours on the floor? Now find the kangaroo card. It belongs on the
He's
ground.
Mama's friend too, remember?
Emma and Maddie, pay attention. Dylan, are you with us? Okay, now everyone, look at the octopus.
Ew, weird.
In your grid. Now look for the elephant. Jacob and Sophia, please stop. Put the elephant on the board. Can you see the octopus? I want you to place the rhino on top
We saw
of it.
Dino. I saw rhinoceros at the zoo when I went with my
Okay,
mom.
put the monkey on the front. Jaden, don't interrupt.
I don't have any
And then put the
animals
shark on
left.
the
Miss
elephant and on the shark,
Aldano, my
put the
game is missing a piece.
Ready? Now flip your cards over. What do you see?
All right, so I did not complete that task. Despite my best efforts to pay attention, that was a struggle for me. And I've done that simulation many times and I can never seem to get it. So I'd love to hear from you. Last names I through L. What made it difficult to pay attention in that simulation? Share in the chat. What made that challenging? Lots of you are saying the background noise. The other students were distracting. Yeah, the other conversations, the classroom windows were open, so it sounded like it was the end of the school day. The bus came by. Yeah, and I want to know, I was trying to listen to the teacher as best I could, but then I kind of wanted to hear what the other students were saying, and I wanted to share my story about, seeing a rhinoceros at the zoo too. Yeah, trying to listen and then having all those outside distractors, for sure. So as a student who struggles with attention, they might feel overwhelmed, anxious, unable to focus. I know for myself, I was feeling all of those emotions. Despite my best efforts to pay attention, there were just many times where there were too many distractors going on. When I think about how I as a student might be perceived by my teacher or by other peers, because I didn't finish the work, I might be perceived as someone who is not capable or incompetent, might be perceived as somebody who is just not motivated because I didn't complete the work, so I must not want to do it. So as I know, speaking for myself in that simulation, I couldn't focus. I could not pay attention. And when I think about our students at home, while there may not be buses coming by, or there may not be 25 other students, there are outside distractors. Maybe the TV is on all the time, or maybe there are little children in the home that are a distraction, or there's other family members, or just their whole routine and family dynamic is completely different than normal. So for a student who already struggles with attention and focus, when you put them in a remote learning environment where they have not experienced this before, having to learn in that environment would be a challenge. So how can we support students who might struggle with this? What can we do and what is our role? So again, keeping in mind that executive functions are something that we have to teach, and they're not skills that students naturally know how to do. And in fact, adults still are learn executive functions all throughout their lifetime. So offering students while they're at home something like a stress ball or rubbing a worry stone or a fidget spinner. It sounds like most fidget spinners are banned at school, but we're at home now. So maybe they can pull out their fidget spinner, because there's actually research that suggests and shows that for students who struggle with attention, whether they are diagnosed with ADHD or not, when your brain is focused on something else, like your hands are moving, it actually enhances your brain's focus and attention on the task at hand. So keeping their hands busy while focusing on something else, like the task, whether that be the assignment or the math problem or the reading, they're actually going to be more likely to stay on task and pay attention. But again, teaching students how to use these as tools and not as toys. So there's also things that teachers can help to support students, other strategies, listening to music. Again, there's research that shows calming, quiet, soft music actually enhances attention and focus. Maybe even like a white noise machine. So if there's a student that you have discovered or learned that their home environment is rather loud and or distracting, maybe suggesting, have you tried doing your work with headphones in, playing some instrumental music? Or maybe have you tried doodling for a couple minutes at a time? Or maybe have you tried doodling while you're watching this video lesson? So again, these are not skills that students naturally know how to use and or have. And they might be things that have been discouraged in the school environment, but at home, they're strategies that they can use. So just a couple others, building in routines and consistency. For students who struggle with attention and focus, for them to know that they can find all the information for your class in one location and it's going to look the same every time is going to be huge for them. So keeping in mind for our secondary students, they have 4, 5, or 6 different teachers that may be all using a different system. Some may be putting their resources on Canvas, some may be putting it on Google Classroom, some may be emailing out the resources. So for our kids that already struggle with that, this is even more of a challenge. So keeping your slide deck simple, keeping everything consistent and the same. They know they're going to go to the same place at this for your class is huge. Giving them permission to take breaks. So whether you're doing an asynchronous or a live lesson, giving them permission to say, now's a good time, pause this video, stand up, grab a drink of water, come back when you feel ready. That's okay. Again, they need to be taught that and told that they have permission to do things like that. And then we talked about the, just as much as you can, helping to support students to reduce distractions.
All right, so next we're going to go on to the next executive function, task initiation, but I want to uplift some of the things that have been shared in the chat. Heather kind of hijacked our chat a little bit and is promoting another session, but on executive function, but that link is in there. No, I mean that in the most positive way. I just saved it. So if you wanted to save it, because it's going to get way lost in this chat, there's 3 dots in the chat to the bottom right that you can click on to save it so that we're able to get even more information on executive function. I believe that knowledge is power. Also, I want to acknowledge, and I'm sorry I cannot acknowledge you by name, but it's 7LH6XU, whatever your name is, that yes, there are a couple of apps that are free. And 7LH also talked about students having to take care of their siblings. I think all of these methods can be used because unfortunately, like parents, they might be schooling at night, and it's really important to redirect yourself so that you are able to focus or you are able to get something started. So let's talk about task initiation. So thank you for sharing in the chat, and please continue to. When appropriate, I don't want us to be chat distracted. So if you are a middle school, or let's also say an elementary school educator, you will need your device right now, a phone preferably. Get your phone. And if you have an iPhone or a QR scanner, go ahead and scan that QR code. If you have an iPhone, you just need to open up your camera over that QR code and it'll take you to a link. If you don't have an iPhone, or if you don't have a QR reader, really, really quickly, go to that bit.ly link, bit.ly/middle422. All lower cases, trying to keep it very simple. I'm gonna give you 5 seconds, middle and elementary educators, to get your directions for our next task. You got 3, you've got 2, 1.5. All right, 1. High school, here are your directions. I'll keep them up for 15 seconds. Five seconds to go. All right, thank you for your participation. Now, high school, you should have had plenty of time to complete that task. Let's survey. Let's do a little quick survey here. So if you were a high school educator, you had the same amount of time that middle school had. I want you to rate your level of, or how you felt during that previous activity. You were great, you were confused, you were pissed off a little bit, or you just checked out completely. I'm getting a lot of confused. Some people checked out. I appreciate your honesty. Hopefully you checked back in. More confused. B is confused. A couple people got a little ticked off. That's okay. You were reading. You didn't have time to feel anything. Okay, I see that fly by. 5 more seconds for responses, and then we're going to pause the chat. Okay, all right, so let's pause high school. Pause with high school. Let's give middle and elementary a time to chime in. You had the same exact task. Middle and elementary, rate your feeling during the previous activity. I feel like we're stuck on A. We're stuck on good. A little bit of C, a little bit of B, more A's. Not enough time. Okay, maybe some extended time. You checked out because maybe it was too easy. All right, majority of middle versus high school were good. You were good. You were able to do it. All right, so what was the difference between the two tasks? So we can pause the chat. We're going to end with Golden saying, checked out. It's too easy. So here was the task that everyone saw for high school. So what did middle school have to do? Middle and elementary. They got the directions of draw a circle, and they even got an exemplar. So what were the differences between the two tasks, and what the heck do they have to do with task initiation? So with task initiation, students may perceive the task that we put before them like the one that I gave high school. Something that is very, very abstract, like looking at the appendage at the end of your arm. Like, that's too many words. I don't understand what you're talking about. It's very abstract. Our task as educators, when we see someone struggling with this executive function before they can begin this task, is we've got to make it as concrete as possible. So middle school and elementary was concrete. So on the next slide, you will see that the more concrete we can make a task, the more attainable it will seem to students. Now on our end, and for the majority of students, they may not need that extra support to make the learning menu more concrete. But there's that small percent that we talked about in the beginning that needs those ideas to be way more concrete for them. So you will see that there's a number of different ways that we can make a task more concrete. We're going to start with the most familiar one. So let's say you tell a student, write a paper. Okay, you know that there's a lot of students that are just going to sit there and stare at the wall, especially at home. When they've got siblings running around and parents running around, there's a lot happening. So last names M through P, even if you're not an ELA teacher, I know you can do this. If you say write a paper, which is very just abstract, what are some concrete, small, mini tasks that students can do to make write a paper seem more obtainable and something that they can start to do? So what are some concrete ways? How do I choose a topic, Bethany? What's some ways that I can help with choose a topic? Sandra's talking about begin with the end in mind, so show the sample paper, absolutely. Chioma, and I'm so sorry if I pronounce your name wrong, definitely some type of a concept map, writing with the introduction. Golden is a graphic organizer. Again, we're beginning with the end in mind. So when we say graphic organizer, I'm seeing that a lot. Specifically, what type of graphic organizer will we give the student? And I see modeling it would be a great one as well. Because if you just give me the graphic organizer, I'm not going to know what to do with it. Specific questions to answer. Dina, thank you. Maybe giving them the list of topics and having that narrow it down. And modeling how to use that graphic organizer. Absolutely. Again, we're talking about a small percentage who would really need help with that task initiation. All right, thank you very much. We can put a pause on the chat. So chunking by task is one very common way. Another way to, yes, I want to acknowledge brainstorming, is chunking by time. There's a percentage of students who may need some different types of support with chunking by time. So I want you to take what's in the chat, take the brainstorm, take the graphic organizer, and I want you to put a time to it to help students really get started with knowing what they have to do. So Megan just wrote, write an intro. Put a time to that. Let's chunk these things according to time. And you can give a range for time. 5 minutes to choose a topic. Kimberly wants it fast. All right, 5 minutes to choose a topic. If I give you a list, choose it. So let's move on. Let's get started. I love it. We have 235 people and they're very quiet. All right, 10 minutes for an intro. Thank you, Stephanie. Thank you, Cynthia. Another 10 minutes for the intro. So put some times to these things. I'll take 2 more suggestions. 5 minutes to brainstorm, 10 minutes for 15 minutes to write your intro. Thank you. So thank you. So putting that time to it might help some students. So the last strategy that I'm going to share under task initiation came from an executive function coach. And we forgot to mention this and no one said anything. You will have access to the slides. Yes, you will have access to the slides. So when you do have access, I would highly recommend, if you have students who struggle with task initiation, to check out this video from Seth. I'm talking about it like I know him, but talk from Seth. And it's his 3-30-3 method. I especially feel like this would be helpful for math, where he has 3 minutes of planning, 30 minutes of continuous work, and then 3 minutes of reflection. So looking at timing certain things, and then the reflection part is something students often miss, is going back and reviewing what they've done. So check that out. All right, executive function number 3 that a lot of students struggle with is, that certain students struggle with, is working memory. So let's test your working memory. Laura is going to kick us off. Laura is going to test your working memory. So go ahead, Laura.
All right. So wherever you are, whether you're on your couch, you're at your desk, you're outside, go ahead and sit up a little bit taller, uncross your legs if they're crossed, just kind of roll your shoulders up, back, and down. Either bring a soft gaze towards the floor or close your eyes. Maybe bring one hand to your chest and one hand to your stomach. Going to go through a couple rounds of a breathing exercise. So wherever you are in your breath cycle, go ahead and exhale all the stale out of your lungs. Just open your mouth, let it go. And then seal your lips together and breathe in for 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Open your mouth, exhale, let it go. All the way down. And then seal your lips together again, breathing in, feeling your belly rise, your rib cage expand, your chest lift, and then take that air, open your mouth, exhale, let it go. Sink your chest, your ribs, your belly, all the way. Seal your lips together and breathe in again, all the way. And then exhale. One more on your own. And then just seal your lips together and breathe at your normal rhythm. And then you can release your hands, you can blink your eyes open and get back in your comfy spot, wherever that may be.
Okay, on the next slide, we're gonna do a little math test. So in your head, I want you to complete number 1 and number 2. No pencils, no pens, no calculators, no devices whatsoever. You have 10 seconds. All right, that's time. So we just worked your working memory in 2 different ways. So on the next slide, we will ask the question. On the next slide, I think Laura is frozen. Some of you were able to calculate it. All right, so on the next slide, it says, what is the difference between the first and second test? So in the chat, I forget where we are in the alphabet. Let's go with T through Z. What was the difference between the first and second test? All right. No, I said veteran educators, 15 years or more. What was the difference you experienced between the first and second test? Easy and hard. What were some other differences that you noticed between the first and the second one? Stress levels, I'm guessing that they decreased, relaxing versus stressful, easy than hard, the complexities of it, they are flying in from our veteran educators. We'll take a couple of more. Multiple steps, simple to complex, absolutely. Rhonda, absolutely. The second required you to hold more information. We're gonna pause the chat with that response. Absolutely. We really tasked your working memory, especially with that second one. So what happened in the first one is Laura gave you a direction and she allowed you to complete it. Then she gave you another direction and she allowed you to complete it. And I scrolled through the videos and I saw some really relaxed educators out there. The second test, there's nothing against math. We love math. Math is life. But the second test required you to hold information in your head while also trying to process information. And that's difficult for most of us to do. While if we gave you more time, Peterson, absolutely, most of us would have been able to calculate it. But for me, I would have given up and moved on to the next thing. So that's our working memory. It's the ability to hold information in mind while also trying to process or complete a task. So we have a set of students that struggle with working memory. And for them, I got this directly from this publication. It said they have normal peer social relations. I put that in quotes because normal is pretty relative. But they might be a little bit more reserved. You might notice in group activities. Difficult to follow those instructions is what most of you experience for the second memory test. And like I just mentioned, it's hard to hold it, it's hard to remember it and process something. So it was hard for me to carry the 1 and then calculate the 3 and then, oh gosh, did I? So it's hard to manipulate that. So how can we help students who struggle with working memory? So what might seem very, very simple to us might be viewed as a very complex task for a student that struggles with working memory. Some ways that we can help that student, the magic strategy throughout all of this, if you come away with one thing, chunking is it. Chunking helps with a number of different executive function challenges. So looking at the smallest possible task. We already talked about chunking in 3 different ways. I'm not going to go back to that. But what most of us may not think of is dual coding. So adding a visual to accompany a text. And this helps to expand and use the full capacity of working memory. So if we're just using text, let's just say we're using that much working memory, but we have this much to use. So we add the visual and we expand that access. I'm not talking about learning styles. There's been a lot of research that says learning styles don't really, there's not a lot of research to support learning styles. That's not what we're talking about. We're talking the science of dual coding. So on the next slide, mnemonic devices, absolutely, Trisha. That's really something that helps with long-term memory too. So if we talk about distributive property, which we all learned in high school at some point, maybe it was called Algebra 1 or Algebra 2, but we learned it. So if someone just put these words in front of us, some of us would be intrigued, others would kind of need more information. So we add the visual in there that a friend of mine drew who was a math teacher. She really got into it. So we add the visual. The visual can be, you know, modeling the actual math problem. Some of you talked about modeling before, or showing a map, or showing a work of art, or showing a chart. Adding that visual to the text helps to use the full capacity of working memory. So think about the importance of adding a simple visual. So on the next slide, you'll see, I tried to bring in as many subject areas as possible. You will see that, okay, if you said, give me a visual, all right, well, I gave them a visual, but that's too much information. So maybe giving a student who struggles with working memory an empty skeleton and having a little workshop with those group of students and saying, okay, let's label 5 to 10 or 7 to 8 of these parts on this skeleton. So giving them something simple to work with and working through it one step at a time is really helpful for a small group of students. For those of you who really want to see the science behind it and want to see the theory, I included this slide that looks at the dual coding and using the full capacity. So in your spare time, if you want to look up this particular theory and read more about it, that information is there for you.
All right, so if you're keeping track, we are on strategy number 4 of 4 for helping to support our students' interest and engagement in remote learning, especially for that population who needs extra support. So that last one is organization, and this might be an image of what's going on in our brains right now, but it could also be the reality of how a student is feeling in this environment. If they're already struggling with organization, then they're probably struggling at home as well, and or even more so. So we're going to see what this might be like for a student. It's about a 2.5-minute video, and since there's 232 of us in here, let's go ahead and turn off our videos. That way, hopefully this video itself doesn't lag. So if you can go ahead and turn off your video if it is on, you're free to turn it back on once we are finished with this video. But this is a 9th grade student named Gabby, and she explains her experience struggling with organization.
My name is Gabby, and I'm in the 9th grade, and it is really hard for me to stay organized. I could never find anything. My notes would be all over the place. Every day I forgot something at school. When I would get home, everything would be everywhere, like my clothes from like the day before, and it was just everywhere, all over the place. You can't find your pencil pouch, you can't find your math book that you have to finish your homework with. I think more than just unorganization, it was just like I could never get my thoughts together. It feels like nobody really understands you, and you're just really like alone. I was actually really trying to get my stuff together, but I just couldn't. Well, now I know how to organize myself. We have color-coded binders for different classes, which is really helpful to me, so I know what class I have to bring that specific color to. In writing class, we get taught how to organize our thoughts, locker checks, backpack checks, binder checks, things like that were really, really, really helpful. I think now my organization is at a level where even going into college, I will be able to take good notes. I will be able to organize my projects. Friends would be like, well, Gabby, can you, help me organize my binders? Like, oh yeah, sure. And I was like, wait, I'm helping somebody organize something?
Sweet, sweet Gabby. What an inspirational story. Notice she said a couple different times, or she alluded to that she was taught these skills, right? So for a student who struggles with organization and they've emailed us and they say, where did you say you were posting those assignments again? Or how do we access the Google Classroom? Or, what are our expectations for completing work? And you're thinking, oh, you did not ask me this again. I put it here, I put it there. I've shown you it in this place and that place. But for a student like Gabby, she said, I was trying, I was doing my best. And so she said how she felt alone. She felt misunderstood. She felt like, well, how come I can't do this? She felt incompetent. And so for our students who struggle with organization, they might be perceived as, sloppy, lazy, just can't get it together. They might be the students that we say, oh, well, they're just not motivated. Well, are they not motivated? Or do they just really not have an organizational system so far? And again, it's not something we can expect students to have mastered by the time they get into middle school or high school. And then especially now in this whole new environment, I know even as adults, we're still trying to figure out our organizational system at home, especially for those students who they don't have a desk in their bedroom, or maybe they don't even have their own bedroom. They don't have a space in their home to be able to do work and to keep everything in a nice, organized fashion. So how can we support these students? This is a quote from Mark Twain. I'll give you a second to read it, but it's funny, but true. So I would have to agree that if I were to eat a live frog, the first thing I do when I wake up in the morning, my day would probably get a lot easier. Cross my fingers at least. So jokes aside, how can we support students to eat the frog? And there's a really good Edutopia video that actually a teacher is modeling this, how she teaches her students how to eat the frog. And it's really just kind of a system of students creating their list of everything they have to do. They rank that list based on due date and or the most pressing item. So for our secondary students and our students who are working towards passing a class, if they were not passing at the third quarter mark, those would be something that they would prioritize. The work for the classes where they are not passing and they want to improve their grade, that would be prioritized. So those would be the items that they would do first, and then they would get it out of the way. So the hardest, most challenging thing that's on that list is what we would do first, and we would do right away. And then everything else will seem easy after that. You'll be more motivated to do the other work because you know it's going to be easier than what you had just completed. And then there's that gratification, that satisfaction of checking things off the to-do list. And then of course the Kermit the Frog is sipping his tea saying, you should be doing your homework, not looking at this meme. Planning and prioritizing your work, right? So because we know that these skills have to be taught, we can support students. Now, again, that's population of students that we're not reaching, that we're not being able to feel like we're engaging. Something like an organizational boot camp that you would host for your students. So what this might look like. For middle schoolers, Gabby had mentioned that she uses the color coding system. And I know a lot of middle school teachers set students up with a color coding system at the beginning of the school year, which maybe that's in place now while students are at home, but maybe not. Maybe they need to reevaluate their color coding system. High school, Google Keep and Google Tasks is really nice. Google Keep is basically like digital sticky notes. You can also put to-do lists on Google Keep, but Google Keep can also be collaborative. So students can share their sticky notes with you and you can make comments on those. Tasks is kind of like a checklist and it's enabled through Gmail. So both of these you can get as apps on your phone. Really nice and handy. I know a lot of high school teachers that have shown students Google Keep and Google Tasks. Keeping in mind that now we're coming at it from a different lens because it is remote learning. And we know that this isn't a one size fits all. So students may need more of something and less of the other. So in terms of the academics and the work that comes into it, modeling and showing students how to use graphic organizers to organize their notes, to organize their thoughts. Utilizing single point rubrics. So for students who struggle with organization and kind of that planning and prioritizing, giving them just a simple rubric for here's what you need to do, here's where you are currently, here's what you need to do to move to success. So little checkpoints. So in the interest of time, I'm going to keep rolling. That was four executive functions to support students during remote learning, but really just to be successful in general, whatever it looks like for how we transition back into the quote unquote normal school, which we know is not going to be what was our previous normal. We know that students are going to need to be taught some of these skills. So just as we wrap up, keeping in mind that this is something that we are fluidly teaching and continuously modeling and reminding students, giving them the opportunities to practice this, maybe even showing them our own home routine. So doing a little video on your setup at home, how you do your work, how you're organizing your day. But then really just empowering students to practice, giving them grace and supporting them in this transition, because we know that they miss you, you miss them, and they want to do well. They still want to succeed. And so however we can support them in this transition will be the most beneficial to them. So when we think about how we can continue to support students, in our next session, which is the third round of these webinars with Trisha and I, which happens to be this Friday, we're going to dig deeper onto the differentiation side, because we know, like as we talked earlier, that missing link of, I'm differentiating, but those same students that aren't finishing their work in the classroom, they're not finishing at home. Those same students that aren't organized in the classroom are not organized at home. So we hope that with the support of executive functions, now we can dig into how we can actually support the differentiation of this. So the academics, allowing them to actually do the work and be motivated to do the work, right? So that's what we're going to spend some time this Friday's round of sessions. This Friday is at noon, which is not necessarily an ideal time for everybody, but we offer it 2 additional times the following week as well. So we'll give you all the details on that here in the next couple of minutes. So stay on with us here while we give you a few minutes at the end for the evaluation and all those links. So as you know, DPI is offering some coaching support sessions for these webinars, and the follow-up to today's webinar is actually going to be tomorrow at 1. So you'll want to register for those. That's kind of that more personal, intimate setting for you to, as like a 2.0 to this session, but then also an opportunity for you to ask some more specific questions. If you know of someone who would benefit from this session, or there's information that we shared today that you feel a colleague or a member of your PLC would love to hear, let them know that we're repeating this session on Thursday at 3 o'clock. So we would love for you to share that information. As you know, you can register for upcoming sessions at our remote learning site. My chat is going off, so I would assume Trisha is starting to share the links, so she will be sharing the links. Yes. For that, if you're interested in our session on Friday, I actually have not looked. I would assume the registration should be open for that already since it's in a couple days. I've lost track of time. So the survey link, Trisha will be dropping in the chat. Remember, these are case sensitive. This goes in the top URL bar on your browser. So type in the bit.ly/RLSS for secondary. And if you've done these webinars before, you know that you have to complete the survey to then receive a certificate. The turnaround time on the certificates is a couple days. So we want to give you a couple minutes here to complete the survey. Trisha has also dropped in the slides for you.
And if anyone is on the webinar from DPI, I just want to give you a big wave, give you a big shout out for the support that and the opportunity that you have granted us here. I don't know if sometimes they drop in, sometimes they do not, but they're always kind of like quiet and they don't want to interrupt. So thank you to any DPI employees who also joined us today. I feel like my chat is frozen. Lisa is here from DPI. Hello, Lisa.
And Nydia was asking for a PDF copy of the presentation, and that is the link that Trisha sent, was a PDF, and the links are clickable. So anything that we shared, you'll have access to with clickable links. Yeah, so thank you for the positive feedback, everybody. We appreciate that.
We have another one, Nancy. Thank you for joining us. Tammy. See, you just have to call them out and then they'll.
Oh yeah, see, we got a good crowd.
So Yolanda,
All right, so it looks like, I don't know if Trisha got cut off there, but it looks like the survey is working for some and not for others. If it's not working for you, just make sure that you are typing it in exactly as it's shown here, and or you're copying just that bit.ly. I'll check myself as well. Okay, so it seemed to work for me that way, but if you're still having troubles, please let us know. We want to make sure. Okay, good. Thank you to those who have said they've got it to work. Yay, and then Susan, I'm glad that you're able to implement these right away. I think somebody else said they're going to try some of these strategies tomorrow with their students. That's wonderful. Thank you so much. So I'm just going to advance to the next slide. I will make sure to share the links again for those of you who still needed it. So just thank you so much. Trisha just messaged me and said she got kicked off of Zoom. So she will also, I'm thanking her, or thanking you all on her behalf. So if you have completed the survey and you do not have any further questions, we hope to see you maybe this Friday or next week for our round 3 of sessions. And we hope you have a great rest of the day.